wanted to give you a good comparison of what a new file is. So I went down to Menards and picked up a Stanley 10-inch file. Single cut mill bastard file. Now, this cost me $7. That's how much it was. Menards is actually inexpensive. There's a lot of places that it would have been almost 10. But I got a brand new Stanley file. And we're going to put a handle on it, and we're going to file some on this bolt, just like we did with the dull files. I'm going to press just as hard as I did on the dull files. Now this is taking off a serious amount of iron. And I think the major difference is the size of the chips. Now this is an expensive item, so I'm going to take good care of it. Clean it before I put it away, and put it away safely so it doesn't get damaged. Quite a pile of chips off of that. And I think the big difference is the size of the chips. We'll take one that hasn't been cleaned yet and hasn't had anything done to it. Now we'll compare that new file against this old file. Now this hadn't had anything done to it, not cleaned. It's the same style of file, it's just been ground off a bit. Somebody wanted to make a chisel out of it. Now we'll try cleaning it. It's not rusty, it's just dirty. Definitely sounds like nails on a blackboard. I turned the volume down. We can see that this one is taking off some filings. They're mostly staying in the file. So we got a pretty good comparison. Brand new file versus a similar file that is pretty dull. So this is going to make a pretty good test of whether we can sharpen a file or not. It has all its teeth. But it's not taking off much metal. And it's easily identifiable too. It's got that nice chisel edge on it. compared to this new one. This was actually kind of hard to push across it as hard as I'm pressing on it. Normally, you wouldn't press that hard, you just file across it like that. But I wanted to make it a good test. You can see that this one's definitely very good. And even though I press really hard, we're not getting anywhere near what we got out of the other file off of this. Even cleaned. Now, just to be absolutely straight with what we're doing, I'm going to take this file and I'm going to clean it with a copper tube, because we've said that the copper tubing does a better job than the file card. Going over this file with a copper tube is taking some gummy tar off of it. I think somebody oiled this file. Now, I know a lot of people are saying, well, they put WD-40 on a file. Oil is not necessarily a good idea for a file. It does prevent it from rusting. I will give you that. WD-40 is a water displacement. But the oil tends to make the filings stay in the file and causes it to have other issues. I'm going to move the file down on the jig a little bit just so that we get a better grip on it. And the guys who say you got to clean the file to make it cut right, I agree with them. If the file is dirty, filled with pins or swarf, or like this one, full of black gunk, it's not going to cut as well. It's not going to be able to penetrate the surface, get in and get a good bite. Now, this file was turned into a chisel. Files and scrapers, I've made scrapers out of files myself. The thing I can say is not a good idea is turning one into a lathe chisel. I've seen that done. I don't recommend it. Files are too hard. Lathe chisels, when you make a chisel for cutting wood, you take it up to a straw color. In other words, you heat treat it, you polish a part of it, and then you heat that part until it's straw colored. Now, why straw? Well, straw is not really hard. It's hard. It's harder than the normal native hardness of the steel, but it's not that brittle, glassy hard. You want to have a little bit of toughness in it, especially on a lathe chisel. Because if a lathe chisel gets caught and you've got it resting on top of the tool rest, it's got no place to go. It's not going to be able to bend. It's not going to be able to vibrate. It's going to snap. And when it snaps, the pieces are going to go all over the place. And that shrapnel will hurt you. So if you're going to make a file into a lathe chisel, take the time to re-temper it. Grind the teeth off. Take all these off. These are stress risers. At the bottom of every one of these teeth is a little crack. That's why when a file snaps, it doesn't snap straight across, it snaps along one of the teeth. Grind off the teeth, then reheat treat it to take it down so that it's tough, not glass hard. You don't need to have a lathe chisel glass hard. A lathe chisel like this one, take a good file. You can file the lathe chisel. That means it's softer than a file. You don't want to have a lathe chisel as hard as a file. Okay, we cleaned this side of the file. Before we put it in the bath, we'll go over it again on the other side and clean it too. But I wanted to have that as a comparison. Okay, clean side down. It's cutting better. That's as good as it's going to get. Now some of the stuff came out of the file and it's laying there, which means it cut a little better after it was clean. I'll file with this one towards that side, then I'll get another file and try it again. That's a cleaned file. We'll even give it the opportunity to get all this stuff off of it. Now it's pinned up pretty good. Now that's everything I could get off of that file. Now we'll compare it to a new one. I'm even going to give this one an extra bit of credit. We're going to file it again. I think we can see that the new file does a heck of a lot better than the cleaned file. Just no comparison. And honestly, most of that is dirt that I cleaned out of the file. So that's as good a cleaning job as I could give it. Now we flip it over and do a quick clean job on the other side, just like the first one. Gave it a shot, electronic contact cleaner too, and scrubbed it out with the card file. So if cleaning it was going to make it sharp, I think we'd have a sharp file now. And we all know that we're not talking about cleaning it, making it sharp. I just want to give it a really good comparison between this and a file that's gone through the acid. So here are our 3 file sharpening candidates. This one we cleaned with a file card and the copper. This one we cleaned with a file card and the copper. This one I've cleaned with a file card, and I'll go over it with a copper now, just to make sure we got everything all on the up and up. And I always do this before I sharpen a file in the acid. Acid eats whatever it's presented. If it doesn't get a chance to get to the steel of the file, it's not going to do anything to sharpen it. It will eat whatever's there, as long as it's something that can be dissolved by the acid. But if it's there, even if it eats it, it's eating the steel next to it just as fast as whatever it is that's stuck on that tooth. So by the time it goes through the gunk that's on the tooth next to it has gotten shorter. Anybody know what that means when you have a saw with teeth that are different heights? Well, they call that cows and calves, because the cows are taller and the calves are shorter. On a saw, if you have a situation where it's cows and calves, the cow teeth, in other words the taller teeth, hit and the calves don't. So you end up, instead of having a saw, you've got a series of sharp chisels in random order that makes the saw buck and jump all over the place. How do I know that? Well, when I first started filing saws, I wasn't any good at it. Nope, took me practice. Lots of time. Now the first saw that I sharpened cut better than it did before I sharpened it. Even with the cows and calves. Because I was working with a piece of junk saw. Had no set on the teeth, had no sharpness, had very little chance at making a good cut. So even though I did a bad job of filing it, it was better than it was when it started. So when people tell you, oh, it's got to take a long time and you won't be able to make any good saws and you're better off just sending them out to somebody because you'll never learn how. Well, they all started someday. They weren't born out of the womb with a file in their hand sharpening saws. They learned how to do it. They practiced. And they got better. You cannot help but get better if you practice. If nothing else, you know which end of the file to use after the first time you picked up the file and tried it the wrong way. Now, the copper tube does a nice job, but this doesn't smear off onto the tooth of the file as much as the copper does. I guess it's going to be a situation where you're going to make your own mind. I like the copper tube. I also like the steel bar. Eight strokes. I got this much off of the 3 files that we cleaned, and I got this much off the 1 file that was brand new. This is a total of 24 strokes of filing. This was 8. So I'm going to say these files are dull. I'm going to wrap them up and get them ready to go into the acid bath. Now they're all safe and protected.